Well, my name is Missy Haslam, and I'm interviewing my grandfather, John Braun Jr., for the Veterans History Project in partnership with the Office of Congressman Blake Moore and the Davis Catalyst Center. Today is, what is it, November
The 9th?
9th.
I think the 9th.
Yep. Today is November 9th, 2022, and we're holding this interview at the Catalyst Center in Kaysville, Utah.
Very well.
And my first couple questions are just basic background. Where were you born, Grandpa?
I was born in Amarillo, Texas, an Army hospital, and Amarillo Army Air Corps base, I suppose. My dad was in, at that time, this is 1943, so he's in the Aleutians. Okay, and my mother decided to go to the woman who raised her, which was my aunt, her aunt, my great aunt. And Jess was with her son, who was in flight school in Amarillo. And so I went to Amarillo with my mother and decided to come into the world there. And then I don't know where we went from that point, because that wasn't, she must have stayed there for a while, because my dad came back from the Aleutians in sometime in late 42, well, it must have been late 43, and went to the Pacific, and then came back for flight school. And so we moved around in that, and I don't know. After the war, so this had been 46, so I'd have been, no, it was probably 45, because I was still pretty small. So by 46, I'd have been a 3-year-old, so yeah, probably 45. We moved up and down the West Coast, closing air bases. So we moved 13 times in 12 months. If you can imagine that. With a baby.
Yeah.
When I filled out the forms for my top secret clearance, you have to list all the places you've ever lived so they can go check and verify that you live there. And I thought, that poor investigator, he's got to go try to find a motel that doesn't exist any longer, and people that have already died say, "Is this little kid there?" So I don't know how they did that, but anyway.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So your dad was in...
My dad's a naval fighter pilot. He was a graduate of the Naval Academy. It was a class of 43, but they graduated in June of 42.
Okay.
My parents were married shortly thereafter. He was a motor torpedo boat skipper, trainer, executive officer, so he took a flotilla of motor torpedo boats from Newport, where they trained, to New Orleans, through the Panama Canal to the Aleutians.
Wow.
And was there when the Japanese attacked the Aleutians in 42 after part of the Battle of Midway. And so they'd gone up there. And then from there, he came back to the States and went to the Pacific to be a gunnery officer, and then flew home to go to flight school.
Wow.
And I don't know what he did from the time he graduated flight school till the war ended. He never talked about that.
Okay.
So he talked to his stepkids a little bit about it, but he never talked to his 2 kids about it.
Gotcha.
And he flew in the Pacific somewhere.
That's awesome.
So I grew up in the military. And moved all over the countryside with my dad. Principally the coasts, Gulf Coast, West Coast, East Coast, because he's Navy.
Yeah.
Not a lot of Navy in the middle of the country.
No.
And but he was a Navy fighter pilot.
Okay.
And commander, and commanded more than he did anything else. So, yeah, it's a great privilege to be a commander. And so,
That's amazing.
but that's how I grew up, and that's how we were in California. He was aboard he was a navigator for the Yorktown, carrier Yorktown, and went to the Orient. And so we moved from Puerto Rico. I stayed in Puerto Rico for a year to finish my well, for about 6 months to finish my junior year while they moved to California.
Really?
Stayed with the family there, and then joined them in California, and was going to go away to school, but my mother decided to go to the Orient with the ship, leaving me with my smaller brother, my younger brother, to take care of. So I went to Long Beach State, and that's where I met your grandmother, and life is history from that point on. You know, but
That's crazy.
yeah,
So you have one younger brother.
have one had.
You had-
He has died.
He's passed
Died last year. Last year, I
Very
think.
recently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But only one sibling.
Okay. And then you said you had half siblings?
Well, my dad, my mom and dad were divorced while we were in Germany, which was a good thing because we were totally, completely not involved, which is a good thing.
That is helpful.
And then he remarried the woman that he divorced her for,
Mm.
which she became my stepmother. And she had 3 children, which were teenagers at the time.
Mm.
So my dad shared more things with them about
That is time.
his combat time in the Pacific than he shared with us. It just wasn't.
Just enough.
I interviewed him one time, and he told me a whole bunch about about everything but that particular slice.
Gotcha.
I don't know what his, fighter pilots always have a call sign. And I have no idea what his call sign was, but I was thinking about that the other day. Boy, I should ask him that,
Yeah.
but I didn't ask him,
Yeah.
so.
That's interesting now.
Yeah.
So then you were at Long Beach?
I was at Long Beach State, which is
Mhm.
now California State University, Long Beach, but then it was Long Beach State. And met your grandmother there. We were together for 3.5 years before we married after we graduated. Both of us came from families that said, the primary thing you have to do in life is graduate from college. Go do it. Okay, so we weren't going to get married till after we graduated.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a year of graduate school afterwards to get her teaching credential.
Mm-hmm.
I just took a year of graduate school. I'm there, might as well do something.
Well,
And went ahead and got my graduate degree.
good for you.
And so then we got married. Went to work for the County of Los Angeles in their budget division. And worked there about 6 months. And as I told you yesterday, I had applied, was going to go be a Foreign Service officer. Thought that sounds cool. Why not? We'll go around the
Yeah.
world. And little did I know that I really probably wouldn't have wanted to do that, but that's okay. Applied to college and didn't get accepted because, as your mother reminded me, my draft number was too low, i.e., you get drafted from 1 to whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was somewhere in that lower period, so it was very high
High likelihood.
likelihood that I would be drafted. This is 1966,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
Vietnam is hot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's just really beginning to ramp up. TET doesn't occur till 68. So it's beginning to roll,
beginning,
and
yeah.
they're needing bodies,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a body that they could have if they wanted it. I said no. I grew up as an officer's son. I know what officers do, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm a college graduate. I am not going to be drafted. So I went to the Navy, and the Navy said, well, you can't see very well, son. You wear glasses, and this is not a good thing. And so therefore, you can be a supply officer, or you can be an engineer, i.e. down, driving the boat. No, my dad's a combat pilot. I know what Navy officers who get to command ships do, and that's not for me. And I knew I didn't want to be a Marine. That was out. It was off the table.
Yeah.
Went to the Army, and they said, we'll make you a lieutenant in 10 months. Went to the Air Force, and they said, we'll make you a lieutenant in 10 weeks. I said, hey, I can stand on my head for 10 weeks. So I joined the Air Force and went to Lackland Air Force Base
Okay.
for my 10 weeks of officer training school.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated 10 weeks later as a lieutenant,
Mm-hmm.
a second lieutenant. And we moved to Pennsylvania. One of the funny things which you can appreciate maybe, but You don't know that you're owned by the military until you're standing in this long line of people, totally naked, because you have put your civilian clothes in a little pile to come back and get later, and they're going to give you all new things from underwear up. And you then realize, I think I don't have any freedom anymore. You know, I am owned.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, graduated, went on to, I was an investigator for the Air Force, the Office of Special Investigations. So I was a criminal investigator as well as a background investigation person. And we moved to Pennsylvania, to Olmsted Air Force Base, which had closed. Moved into a 3-bedroom set of quarters, just the two of us, and moved from there, because the post was closing, the base was closing, to Colonel's Row. And so I was now in a 4-story brick duplex home on the banks of the Susquehanna River.
Wow.
You know, it's Judy and I. Okay. And that's where your Aunt Allison was born. She was born in Pennsylvania. So she was born there. That was a job where we wore civilian clothes, which was okay. We had to do that to protect my enlisted agents, because if they had a occasion to go visit the post commander to talk about some sort of case, he could dismiss them if they were, dismiss meaning not give them much credence, if he knew they were enlisted. So to protect them, we drove unmarked cars and we stayed in civilian clothes, which was different because I'd always watched my dad go off to work in uniform. And I had a uniform, but I didn't wear it. And after about 6 months of that, probably 9 months of that, I realized that there was no upward mobility. So prior to going into service, I had no real thoughts of being a military officer and staying in the service. But when I got there, it's a good life. I mean, it's a good career. I didn't have a problem with that. But there was no upward mobility. I was working for a major who had been a captain in the OSS in the Philippines, and after 18 years, he was still a major.
Wow.
And there were only 6 colonels in the whole bunch, all the way up the chain. And I thought, I mean, if you're going to be in the Army, you might as well go for it. So I inter-service transferred from the Air Force to the Army.
Okay.
And when I did that, I chose a combat arms. So I'm an armor officer.
Okay.
This is the tanks on my shoot. Okay. And so I wanted to be a combat arms officer. I wanted to go where the rubber met the road, and where I would be in the Army and not just a function of the Army. And so I branch transferred, or inter-service transferred, and we moved to Fort Knox, and they trained me to be a tanker, and said, I'd been there about 7 or 8 months, and got a phone call, and guy said, the general wants you to be his aide. And so, is that okay? I said, well, I don't know. Let me talk to my bride and see what she wants, because she's got to, do all these functions with me if I go do that. So I called her up. She said, yeah, it's okay. Let's do it. Well, they called me back in the afternoon, and they said, sorry, you're on levy to Vietnam. So I had to call her back and say, guess what? I'm leaving in about, that was probably November, and I was off, in January. So a couple of months, I'm off my way to Vietnam. Professionally, good move. I mean, I'm an officer. I mean, I'm trained to be in the Army. I've trained to go to combat, so this is a good move professionally. Terrible move for a family. You know, I'm leaving a wife who's got, well, Allison's less than a year, and she's pregnant with Ann. And so I'm saying, see ya, I'll be back in a year.
Oh my God.
You know, don't look for me. And I went to, my first stop was I went to jungle school in Panama for 2 weeks. Yeah, went down there to learn how to live in the jungle, because Vietnam's jungle.
Yeah.
In places, not everywhere, but in lots of places. And where I was, it was jungle. And so I went to Panama to learn how to live in the jungle. Excellent course, thoroughly enjoyed it. Came home for about 3 or 4 days and then left. And they fly us, and we're all of us in short sleeve uniforms. As we fly to California, we fly to Anchorage. We get off the plane in the middle of the night in our short sleeve shirts in January in Anchorage. It's not good. No. But anyway. Then we went to Vietnam. I did my thing there. So I was telling the guy who asked about my MAC-V patch that I was an advisor to the Vietnamese Popular Forces. To give you an idea, that would be an armed militia. Okay, and then you would have the regional forces, which were like National Guard Reserve. And then you had the active Vietnamese Army. Okay, all of these varieties. My people were from the hamlets. I was in a hamlet out on the Cambodian border. And they carried carbines from World War II and really didn't want to tangle with the North Vietnamese, okay? So their intel was pretty good, and so they pretty much avoided them, but they were there to protect their homes, okay? The next level up was these reserve forces, and then the armed forces. Advisors with the armed forces couldn't go out on a patrol with less than 200. I was expected to go out on a patrol with 20. Those guys were armed with automatic weapons, machine guns, mortars, all those kinds of things. My guys had carbines and no automatic weapons. And we were supposed to go find the enemy. Well, the good news was we didn't. You know, I found the enemy. Your your grandmother wanted me to tell you about my Bronze Star for Valor. Because I was in enough combat to know that being shot at is not fun. And it's not like in the movies. There's no glory in it. You worry about who was the idiot that made these buttons so big that they're holding me off the ground. I can't get close enough to the ground. You know. But our little we had 2 fire bases, the one I lived on and 2 hamlets. One hamlet was about 6 kilometers south of us, okay? And they were being attacked. We had a 2-division North Vietnamese Army base camp just across the border from us. Probably less than 20 kilometers from us. So they'd send over forces to mortar us and shell us and practice. Yeah, we weren't really trying to, but this particular time they decided they sent a force in to try and take this little hamlet. And we, of course, objected to that. And so they flew us. They took us from my fire base as the advisor. I went down there to handle the gunships and do all of that. And we prevailed. And they got their bloody nose and went home. And out of that, as your grandmother said, he said, don't be a hero. Well, I wasn't a hero. I just was in the right place at the right time. And somebody put me in for an award. So, yeah. But I guess I did.
Have done something.
I probably did something. Yeah, you know, bullets were flying and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. But my job was to bring in the gunships and all the air power and do all that kind of stuff. And so, learned a lot of things in Vietnam. But that was one of those. And the Lord's hand was there. You know, it's one of the few times that I had an artillery battery on the fire base I was on, and there was another fire base where the rest of the battery was. So we had 2 guns with us. And these Tet happened in 1968. I got in Vietnam in '69. Okay, so Tet happened in '68, and that's when the North Vietnamese forces really came in and they overrun lots of the country, and you had battles away and all of those kinds of things. Well, they tried to do some upgrades, and so they had a bunch of howitzers that were going home for repair, and General went down and got them off the repair point and took them out and put them on these fire bases. They were special forces fire bases, and we had 2 guns at our location, and had some lights down by the lake, and so they decided they'd have a fire mission, and they'd shoot them, and they'd, you know, shoot a howitzer around down there. Well, these are kids, you know, they're 18, 19-year-old soldiers, and they didn't think to look through the barrel to make sure that the round wasn't going to hit the perimeter wall.
Oh, no.
And so they went boom, and just before they fired, because I was up looking, I mean, I'm just an observer, so I got to watch the fire mission, see what happens.
Yeah.
And the voice very distinctly said, "Duck." And so I ducked. I followed the prompting. Why, I don't know, but I did, so I ducked. And the round went off in the wall right in front of us.
Oh, my goodness.
And so we had shrapnel all flying over our heads. Had I been up, well, who knows what would have happened, but I wasn't. So first time I know that he was there to help me. Yeah, he was there. And so I had a good tour in Vietnam. I, went on R&R after 9 months because Anne was born in August. Your mother was born in August. And so she came, it must have been October, 10 weeks later, whenever. And so I went back to Vietnam with 90 days left in country, roughly. And then flew home mid-January somewhere, I guess. Again, one of those tender mercies, because our flight landed in Travis Air Force Base, which is outside of San Francisco, but we had to get from Travis to San Francisco to get planes so I could go to Los Angeles, where I'd left your mother, or your grandmother, and this is the middle of the night. I mean, we're at 4 something when we landed, and, so we scrambled, jumped in a cab, 4 or 5 of us, and raced to the airport and got the last flight into LA. So otherwise I'd have had to wait for several more hours before I got home. From there we went to Germany. I was a company commander in Germany, brigade adjutant in Germany, which is a personnel officer for a 3,000-man brigade.
Wow.
Then went back to Fort Knox. From Fort Knox we went to Fort Benning. I was an instructor at Fort Benning. Lead instructor, chief instructor, whatever the right words are. They work for me anyway. On anti-armor warfare, so tanks and how to kill tanks and those kinds of things. And then at that point, as I told you yesterday, the guy who was directing my career wanted to send me to Korea because it was better for him because I was a competitor to him. And I said, no, I'm not going. And he said, you have to go. I said, no, I don't. I quit. He said, you can't quit. I said, I can quit. Watch me. And so I did. And that's when we moved to Utah. This is 1976. So I'd had 10 years of active service. Got a reserve commission. It's, again, a funny story back to my earlier days when we first arrived at Fort Knox. Because I've been in the Air Force.
Yeah.
I don't have any Army uniforms. I don't have anything. But now I'm going in the Army. And I met my classmates in my Armor Officer Basic class. They were all West Point graduates. They had come down from the academy just after they graduated, and my class was forming. So they helped me find, this is what an Army uniform looks like, and this is how you put it on, and this is what you wear it for, and, those kinds of things. And they were all going to Ranger School after. And so I got all excited and said, hey, I'm tough. I can go to Ranger School, airborne, jump out of planes. Oh, yeah, let me do all that. So we went to, I applied for Ranger School, said, hey, I'd go to Ranger School. And they came back and said, sorry, it's only for regular Army officers, and you're just a Army officer. Too bad, you can't go. Okay. So then I go to Vietnam, get my regular Army commission, come back from Vietnam and said, well, to send you to Ranger School. I said, are you crazy? I've already been to the big combat in the world, and you want me to go to Ranger School and learn how to play in combat? I already been there. No, thank you. I don't want to. Then we went to Fort Benning, and all the guys are jumping out of airplanes, and, we have the paratrooper towers and all that good stuff. Oh, this is exciting. I think I'll do that too. And told your grandmother, I think I ought to go to airborne school. I'm right here. It's only 3 weeks. I can learn how to jump out of airplanes. She said, do tanks jump out of airplanes? I said, not successfully. And she says, and neither do you. And I said, yes, ma'am. And so I didn't go to, you don't see any airborne wings. Nope. You don't see any Ranger tabs. I didn't do any of those kinds of things. But
Tanks jump out of airplanes?
Yeah, no. No, tanks don't jump out of airplanes, and neither do you. Yes, ma'am.
Right.
So, yeah. But then we left there, came to Utah, and I picked up a reserve commission before I left. Changed my RA commission, regular Army commission, to a reserve commission, and came here, and got a job as an instructor at the Army School, the Reserve Forces School in Salt Lake. It's part of the 96 Army Command, and stayed in for another 23 years, and had a great Army career as well as a great civilian career. I was an insurance agent for 10 years, and then I was an insurance regulator for the Utah Department of Insurance for 24 years, I guess. Retired from the Army in 2000. As I was telling you earlier, I'd get this letter every year as a colonel. I finally got promoted to colonel. And when I got promoted to 06, I'd get a letter from the General's Department every year that said, in so many words, ha, you're not eligible to be promoted to general because you haven't been to the Army War College. You could go to the War College by correspondence, but they had a caveat that you had to have 3 years of reserve duty left. Well, I've already got 27, 28 years remaining. Okay. And so that wasn't enough time. So they wouldn't send me that way. I had to go to the active school. And finally had that opportunity to go to the active school. But that was Becky's senior year. She's captain of the soccer team, captain of the basketball team, all area sports, etc.
Yeah.
I couldn't leave her for another year and go to school so I could become a general.
Yeah.
That just wasn't going to happen. He didn't want that to happen. The Lord had other things in mind for me, so I ended my career as a colonel. Great career. You had a question earlier on a few days ago about being a commander, because that's what I was.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to be. I worry that we don't have a lot of war fighters left in our senior command structure, and so what will happen when and if we do go to war? Seem to be an awful lot of officers who want to avoid command. Command's got risk. I mean, if you're responsible for everything that all the people underneath you do or don't do as a commander. If they do good, yay, wonderful. If they do poorly, that's not so good.
Yeah.
But either way, you're the one, whether it's your fault or not, you're still the one in charge.
Yeah.
But that's what I desired to do. So I was lucky enough I commanded at the platoon level, I commanded at the company level, skipped battalion, and was able to command at the brigade level. Yeah, so I had 3 battalion commanders underneath me, and lieutenant colonels. I got to do that for over a year, and then I went back to the ARCOM, to the Army Reserve Command in Salt Lake as the G4. G4 is logistics.
Okay.
So I was over the logistics operation for all the units in 7 states. And,
Gotcha.
budgets in the millions of dollars. And did that. And one of the things you learn as a leader is when to get out of the way. And so I asked my staff when I became the G4, I said, what do you want me to do? What am I supposed to do? As a commander, I have lots of things to do, but now I'm not a commander anymore. What do I do? And he said, sir, if you just stay out of the way, we'll be in good shape. Because I had a civilian staff, and they did all the ordering and the supply stuff, and they knew what they were doing. And he said, if we need something from you to talk to the general about something, we'll call you. And so it was really different to not be the hands-on guy, but be the guy that was responsible. And so that was fun. And I had to tell some of my battalion commanders, they'd call me and say, I've got them doing everything I want them to do, and they're screwing around, and they're doing everything right. What do? I said, go take a walk. And I'd say, go what? I said, go take a walk. Get out of their hair. I'm not a micromanager. I hate to be micromanaged. I had some commanders that were micromanagers, and I just don't like that. I gave my commanders all the freedom of they could handle.
Yeah.
Go do it. My platoon leader, so I was company commander. Go do it. And because it's easier to just give them a course correction than it is to make them start or stop. And so, yeah, I worked for really good commanders and really bad commanders in my travels. So, yeah, learns a lot to learn. I learned lots of good leadership skills, which transferred to the civilian world as well. Yeah. I did the same thing with my subordinates in the insurance department. I had 4 staff heads working for me. Of the 8, 4 of them were mine. Same thing. I hired you to do a job. Yeah. You go do it.
I trust you to do it.
Well, you're a mother. Okay. Eventually you'll give Maverick a task. Okay, he's not quite there yet, but you'll give him, but maybe it's just picking up his toys. Okay, and he's going to want to do it his way. Well, that's not nearly as efficient or as fast or the same way that you would do it. But it gets the job done. He still gets his toys picked up. Well, I had the same thing with battalion commanders, where I had one battalion commander that thought like I did, and I had one who didn't think like I did at all. But they were equally successful. But I had to recognize that this one just did it differently than I did. But yeah. I mean, sure, I can pick it up and do it, but that's not what I'm training you to do. You have to have the freedom to make your own errors. And when you make your own, now if you make the same error twice, now that's a different story. Now we'll have to talk. Yeah. But making a mistake, I had a funny story in Germany where we're going down the road. I got a column of tanks. I'm tank number 6 because I rode behind my first tank platoon. And we're just motoring down the road. I look at my map and tell my lieutenant, who's the platoon leader leading us, he's going the wrong way. Turn around and go the other way. So my whole tank column turns around, and he goes by me thinking, Commander is up in the night. He doesn't have a clue. We get down the road about another 2 or 3 miles, and I say, oh, shoot. He was going the right way. I'd say, you were going the right way. Turn us around and go back the other way. We turn around and go back the other way. So we finally pull into position. And Yeah, I think it was the same time. We're facing, for lack of a better term, we're facing north.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the battalion is facing south. And my flank platoon sergeant calls me up and says, "Sir," he says, "they're all facing south and we're facing north. What do you think we should do?" I said, "Turn around." So a tank can pivot in place. So we just pivot around. Now we're all facing the same way. It's just good. Yeah, nobody noticed that. But this poor lieutenant who I'd turned around hopped off. I could see him. He was way off on the flank. And he popped out of his tank turret and stomped all the way to my turret, climbed up on my tank, and just so mad he was just going to just destroy me. And I said, "Yeah, I screwed up." And he just melted. But, you know, the hard thing about being a commander is you have to be close to your troops, but you're not their friend. It was a hard thing to teach a platoon leader, because he's the same age they are, or a little bit older. Okay, he's, 23 or 24, maybe they're 19, 20. Okay, his NCOs are going to be way older than he is. And they're going to be in their 30s and 40s. But teach him that he can't go play games with them. He can't go drinking with them. He can't do any of that kind of stuff, because he's, at some point, the hardest thing the commander has to do is tell a soldier to go put himself at risk, to know that he might not come back, that I'm going to put him in harm's way. I have to. And he has to have confidence in me that I'm not doing that foolishly, that I have looked at all the parameters and I've done the best I could do to keep him safe, even if he isn't safe.
Yeah.
And that weighs heavily on you as a commander. And then, but the joy of being a commander is you get to lead those troops.
Yeah.
But it's just, that's the dichotomy of a commander.
Yeah.
That's responsibility. You're going to send them to war.
Yeah.
And they might not come back. And I worked for commanders where I would have gone to war with them in a heartbeat. I would have followed them anywhere. I knew they knew what they were doing. I worked for some commanders that didn't have a clue. And I would have hated to have gone to combat with them, because they would have put me in dangerous situations because they were not smart enough to not keep me out of them. And so, but being a commander is the best job in the Army. It's absolute best job. And your soldiers will humble you if you're not. I can remember brand new brigade commander, I'm sitting behind my desk, doing my thing, and my trash can's full. Well, in the drill, I'm gonna go empty my trash can. I'm a big boy, I got 2 legs, I know how the trash can is. And so I pick up my trash can, I'm about 3 steps, and a young soldier says to me, "Sir," he says, "that's my job. And if I don't do it, the first sergeant is gonna just not be nice to me. So can I have your trash can?" And I thought, yeah, no, I understand. Okay, I'll go back to sitting up here and being the boss.
Yeah.
But because they all have a job to do and they want to do it, and you just want to give them the freedom to do it. And a good career.
Yeah. That's crazy. How did it feel being a commander in actual combat wartime?
Again, same heavy responsibility. We're putting us in harm. But in my case, I had led a 5-man unit. I had a medic, and I had a heavy weapons operator, I had a communications specialist, and I had me. I guess I had an executive officer. There's this 5-man mobile advisory team. You don't really think about it much, I guess, because you have trained so long to do it, you just do it. And then afterwards, you think about it. But doing it, you just do it. And I think that's why we train, so that one of the things that sets our Army apart from armies in the rest of the world is that we explain what we're doing to our soldiers. Okay? So I would get a mission as a tank company commander that we're supposed to go from point A to point B and do something. Well, I then would translate that to my 3 platoon leaders and say, okay, we're going to, from point A to point B to do this, and this is your job, this is your job, and this is your job, and this is my job, this is where we fit, and we fit in the overall mission in this way, because we're just one company out of 3 in a battalion and out of 9 in a brigade, and, you know, so, but if I'm dead, one of them has to take over. And they have to know what it is I know. Well, we take that all the way down to the driver of the tank, so that if somebody dies, he's suddenly the only one on the, he's now in charge,
Yeah.
he has to know what to do. Where a lot of armies stop at the lieutenant level. And the troops have no clue, they just show up, you know, go do this, okay, they go do that, but they don't know why. It's just a unique.
Yeah.
And so that carried over into my civilian life. You know, if we had a decision from the Commissioner of Insurance, then I had to explain that to my subordinates, who may or may not like that decision. But nonetheless, they had to know about it and had to know how to implement it and what to do with it. Same way. So in case I wasn't there, that decision could still be carried out. But there's no, in my case, the fear in combat, and it's real, comes after. Because you're so busy doing that, in my case, there wasn't time to be afraid until after. Okay, when, I mean, combat's been explained in some places as lots of quiet, peaceful time followed by chaos that's very intense for a short period of time. And so I can relate to that, but, so that's when you have training, you know. I mean, I want my soldier to understand what he's supposed to do, but if I tell him to fall down, I expect him to fall down. I tell him to get up and run, I expect him to get up and run, and not ask why, just do it. So you do that, and the higher up, of course, the less exposed you are.
Yeah.
And so it's different. But front line, where folks are shooting at you, then yeah, you react rather than consciously think to act, even though the reaction may be to consciously think to go here or go there rather than go someplace else. I don't know if that helps.
No, it does. That's
No,
really interesting. So you were talking, you kind of said it, combat's kind of like, or combat zone even, it's just more of like times of peaceful, just chill, and then followed by intense moments.
Yeah.
What did you do during just like the down moments?
Well, we were trainers, so we would meet with the Vietnamese forces. We would train them how to use their weapons and how to patrol, how to move in combat, how to do all of those kinds of things, which is principally what we did. It's humanitarian stuff, but we did mundane things like too. We'd go down to the village and get a haircut. I mean, you know, we'd go to the lake and yeah, go swimming, take a bath, because that's the only thing we had. You know, it was funny things in Vietnam that you don't think of, but they're funny, at least to me. We, of course, had no bathrooms. Okay, so you had a latrine. Okay, and you collected the waste. Well, then you had to burn it. Okay, no place to bury it.
Yeah.
Because you're in a compound, you know, the Vietnamese live here and we live in the middle, and And so you have to burn it. Well, everybody gets a turn. And I'm a captain. You know?
Yeah.
I got my turn out there making sure the waste was consumed. You know, just like my privates did. I didn't have privates, I only had sergeants. But so that it was a great day when the Seabees came and actually built us a bathroom. We actually had toilets, and we had what's the field I'm looking for? We had, you know, what you would have if you lived on a farm, you know, the waste field. So it all. But we had no toilet seats.
So you had toilets.
We had toilets, but no toilet seats. And they didn't plumb it right, so the waste stacks didn't work quite right. So it was not as pleasant as a normal bathroom. So we rode home took the Sears catalog, sent our order to Sears in the States, and we got toilet seats, because otherwise we had to make our toilet seats out of plywood.
Not quite what you
It's
wanted.
not what you really like. It works, and it did work for several weeks until we got toilet seats from the States. But we got toilet seats. In the same way with our showers, I was telling you guys yesterday on the phone. You know, we just, the Vietnamese in the village, in the hamlet, and the elephants, who they used for hard, you know, for lifting logs and all that kind of stuff, and us, we all used the same lake to bathe in, and you'll get water from. And as your grandmother asked, where'd your water come from that you drank? It beats the heck out of me, but I guess it came from the lake. I don't know. I don't remember. It's just not something I remember. So, but we, you know, probably the one thing we did that was, in combat, you try not to do the same things on a regular basis so that you have a routine. Okay, so you try to vary that routine. Well, probably the one thing we didn't do on a routine, varying much, is come 5 o'clock. I mean, hey, work day's over. Jump in the 5-quarter, drive down to the lake. We'll all go take a bath. You know, and then we'd come back up, and then the Seabees also built us a shower. We put 6 55-gallon drums of cold water and 2 55-gallon drums that had a stovepipe that went through them, and you put diesel in the bottom, and you threw a match at the diesel, and it went whoosh, and it heated the water, and it was very hot, but it took 6 to 1 to keep us cool, and then we had a shower. But again, not a shower that you would think of with shower curtains and all that. No. We just had water coming on our heads. You know, yeah. We didn't have shower curtains. We didn't have any of those kinds of things. But
Crazy.
lived in a bunker. You know, was very uncomfortable. I would go. We had about a 30-kilometer drive on dirt roads to the next major metropolis, which was very big, but nonetheless it was and we would go up there on occasion. We would drive the road, and of course nobody owns the road. It's not a safe road. And you've heard talk of Agent Orange, which was the defoliant they used, and what they did, they'd come in and push the jungle back about 300 meters on either side and just bulldoze it away from the road, which so made your ambushes a little less likely to happen. And we'd run that road to go to the up where we could get some supplies. Everything came in by helicopter, and so we would run the road to Bamituit. Well, when we got up there, we slept above ground.
Really?
Yeah, very uncomfortable when you slept in a bunker for the whole time you're there. And so, you know, you get used to what you get used to. And I was very happy with lots of sandbags over my head. But, you know, just one of those things. Yeah.
So you were able to get mail?
Yes. Mail came, took about 2 weeks. I talked to Judy once the entire time I was in Vietnam.
Really?
Yeah, I went to Saigon for some sort of a conference. I don't remember what. Mm-hmm. And we were there for a couple of 3 days, and so I got access to a telephone at the I think at the USO, but I'm not sure where. It's, 50 years ago. I don't remember. And I called her, of course, middle of the night, and of course, it just panicked her because why is my husband calling
in the middle of the night,
in the middle of the night to tell me that he's hurt or something?
Yeah.
No, I just called and say hello. And we probably talked 5 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
Everything else was by mail. And so we would write every day. And if I went on a patrol with my popular forces, I would write 5 or 6 letters before I went on the patrol, and then somebody would mail one every day. So the potentiality was that she would receive letters for 10 days even after I died. Because that's just how the process went. But we had good mail service, and everything had to come by mail. There wasn't any place to go buy anything. We're all going on R&R. We don't have suitcases.
Think about that.
We're gonna fly from Vietnam to Hawaii.
Yeah.
There were lots of R&R places, but where I went to, which was Hawaii, well, we all got to have something to carry something in, because we have barracks bags and we have B4 bags and things like that, but we don't have any civilian stuff like a suitcase. So we get to the PX up in Bamituit, and they have this little bag, about yay big, and little handles on it. Well, everybody's got the same one. They're all the same color. There's just one bag, and everybody flying's got the same bag. So we get to Honolulu, and some guy picks up my bag, and I pick up his bag. We get to the hotel, and we go, oops.
No.
And so we had to find each other in the various hotels, which we did, because I had things for her. But you don't have none of that stuff available to you. And so they're just funny little things like that kind of things happen. And there are no BOQs, no temporary living facility. I mean, all of that stuff is not at my level, because I'm way out in the jungle.
Yeah.
I'm miles and miles from everywhere. And so everything came by helicopter. One of the things we didn't get, because my province headquarters, my headquarters above me, the Army's very good about giving you rations.
Yes.
Okay, so rations would include ice cream and cake and desserts as well as your food. Well, because I'm at the end of the pipeline and it has to go through the province headquarters first, we got what they didn't. If they didn't want it, we got it. So one time we got chicken backs instead of the rest of the chicken.
Just chicken
so we could
backs.
Just chicken backs. We complained, and we were told the Army doesn't buy those. Well, we said, yeah, well, we're eating them. Yeah, and we didn't get ice cream because they knew the ice cream would melt on the helicopter, and they didn't want us to get soupy ice cream.
Oh.
So they had our ice cream rations at their place.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah, it was nice. We were happy for them,
That's crazy.
Yeah, but again, those are the kinds of things that happen, and so.
That's just how it was.
Yeah, different as in Germany, when we'd have C rations, they were from World War II. In Korea, yeah, you pull a chocolate bar out of the can, really good Hershey's chocolate, and they were like a crackle bar.
Oh Yeah.
okay, but they're round because they come in a round tin. And they're gray with age. They sure taste good. So, we ate them anyway. But yeah, our sea rations in Germany as well as in Vietnam were, so that was before meals ready to eat, MREs. We didn't have those. We had sea rations. We had C and K rations, yeah. But worked. We all survived.
All lived.
Yeah. So.
That's crazy. So then did you send packages back and forth?
Yeah, we got packages.
Okay.
Again, we couldn't buy anything. That's where I was
Yeah.
going when I said that before. I needed some new socks because your socks. In jungle school, my boots rotted off my feet. Okay, they're leather boots. I'm in the period before jungle boots came. I mean, if you're familiar with the Army, wears different kinds of combat boots. Ours were just heavy black leather boots, and that's what I went to war. Well, they just rotted off my feet in Panama because we were in so much water. It was so wet. And trench foot was a real issue because we were always wet. So anyway, I needed some new socks, and I just couldn't go to the store and get socks.
Yeah.
So I wrote home and said, "Sweetheart, please go to PX and buy me some boot socks, and I also need some mustard and some probably ketchup, things you couldn't get,
Yeah.
And so I get a box, and in the process they popped the top off the mustard.
Oh, no.
So I had mustard all over my new socks.
Oh, no.
But that's all right. They got bath. Everything else was good. But we had mustard. Just little things that you don't think about. We had a Vietnamese cook. Well, of course, we have to teach him how to cook like we want.
Yeah.
And so the team sergeant, there was a team. I had an advisory team, and we were located with a Hamlet team. So we were together. There was about 12 of us, I guess. And the team sergeant for the Hamlet team was a pretty good cook, and so he helped him learn how to cook. So we decided we'd have chili. Chili's a good thing. Well, the problem was he kept called away to the radio or to this or to something else. Well, he'd forget whether he had seasoned the chili. So he seasoned it again because he couldn't remember. And we're sitting there, and of course we've got no shirts on because it's hot. I'm in Vietnam, and we're eating this chili, and the water's just pouring off us. It is so hot. And we kept saying, "Oh, I need some more of that," because the Army didn't issue chili. This was on our own. We had to get it flown in from the States in our little chili cans and made our own chili. We did the same thing for Thanksgiving. We wanted pumpkin pie. And so we don't know how to make pumpkin pie. We don't know pumpkin pie has pie crust and pumpkin pie has spices and all that stuff. We just think you open the can, put the pumpkin in. We did that. We made pies. They were awful. We didn't eat those pies. We didn't eat those pies. We threw those away because pumpkin out of the can is just not what it's not what you want. And so, but those are funny things you do because you don't, at province headquarters they had Army cooks. We were too little as a unit. They would get to regular Army units had their own Army cooks, but we didn't have those. So we did it on our own. They did, but yeah, it's just funny stories that come out of that,
Do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
So when you went on R&R, how did it feel having to go back to Vietnam?
Well, you're sad to leave your family, of course. It's not fun getting on the airplane knowing she's going to go back. Fun part of Vietnam, when I got to R&R, when I arrived there, I got to see Ann for the first time, your mom for the first time, because Judy brought her with her. She left Allison at home with her parents, because Allison was, I missed Allison's between the first and second birthdays.
Okay.
I missed that whole year. It took a while for us to overcome that, because that's the year where they learn to talk, and they learn to walk, and they learn to, you know, they think for themselves, and they become more independent. And
You weren't there.
I wasn't there. And so, you know, I saw your mother when she was about 10 weeks old, I guess, and which was good, good for me. And but I would have been sad because I was leaving, but on the other hand, I was going back to the job that I was sent there to do. Coming from Vietnam, it was a pretty orchestrated process. I flew from where I was by helicopter to, I probably flew on to the CIA's airplanes, okay, and flew from the G&E airport to, which is a little province I was in, flew from there to Da Nang, which was a big Air Force base. I actually stayed in a building, you know, again above ground. This is not right in the middle of this big Air Force base. Then they took us by commercial air to Hawaii.
Okay.
So I had a fairly structured, I knew I was to go to G&E and get on an airplane, and I was to go here, and I was to go there, and it almost like being a ticketed passenger, but not without, no tickets, but like being a ticketed passenger. On the way home, the only ticket we had was to get us to Vietnam. So I landed in Da Nang, came back into Da Nang from, well, then I had to arrange transport home, back to my place,
Yeah.
however I could find it. Okay, so I ended up finding the Army had some airplanes at that point, which eventually got transferred to the Air Force, but we had some airplanes, Caribous, I guess. So I ended up getting in Da Nang and wandering around Da Nang Air Base trying to find an airplane ride. Finally found a ride, you know, slept on a table because, you know, it was all space available.
Yeah.
Finally found these two guys going my direction. And so it took me about 3 days to get back. What took 3 or 4 hours going, but it took about 3 days to get back because there wasn't any mechanism. You know, because the mechanisms were set up for the active Army personnel that were there. There were in active Army units, or could come back to headquarters and things like that. Well, we were just advisors and stuck out in the middle of nowhere. And so we had none of that infrastructure. So, but I don't remember feeling any, again, you're asking 50 years ago, you know, but other than feeling sad, it was like, well, I'm going back so I can come home.
Yeah.
You know, I got to go back so I can come home. And so, again, for that last few, you know, we had to take a daily malaria pill. We took a monthly malaria pill. Okay. So you knew you were going to take 12 of the monthly ones, and you were going to take 365 of the other kind. And so your goal was to get to be less than a 2-digit. You want to be a 2-digit midget, which means you had less than 30 days of pills to have to take. And so that was your goal. And when you got to that goal, you wanted to just hunker down and stay. No, you guys, you know, got on patrol? No, I don't think so. I think I'll wait. Yep. It's okay, because there were lots of people that were killed on those last patrols, you know. And so, no idea why I was spared. You know, there were certainly opportunities for me not to be spared, but the Lord had a plan. And I suppose you're part of that plan. But yeah, I didn't know what the plan was, but He knew what the plan was. So, yeah.
How did it feel going home? Like, were you nervous to go home? Were you excited?
To some degree, yeah. you're coming back into an environment that's, in quotes, safer,
Yeah.
but in an environment that didn't like us. We were baby killers. We were bad people because we were soldiers in Vietnam, and so we couldn't wear our uniforms home. I mean, I couldn't wear a uniform on an airplane for a long time, even if I was, for probably 6 to 10 years after Vietnam. We didn't travel in uniform because people didn't like us, and they'd say nasty things to us, but the feeling was, I mean, you've heard of people kissing the tarmac when they get off the airplane because they're so happy to be back in the United States of America, where life is open and free, and I can go anywhere I want to, and I don't have to worry about somebody saying, well, you can't go to Yellowstone. I can go to Yellowstone if I want to. You know,
Yeah.
the only place I can go anywhere I want to. So that was hard. It was hard to be. I think I came home from Vietnam mentally, and was welcomed back into the States when I marched in a Veterans Day parade in Ogden, probably in the mid-90s. I came back in 1970, but it was that long before I felt welcomed as a soldier. And, you know, very uncomfortable. Plus adjusting, and because you're so attuned to survival that everything is, you watch everything, you know. And we told the other thing we told our young men when they went home was, don't describe it. If you want the butter, say, Mom, please pass me the butter. Don't say, Mom, blah, 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 I need the butter. You know, because they were not, crass is a good word, you know. So we tell them, don't describe it. And the other thing, again, you're in survival mode. Okay, so there were many stories where spouses or family members were unintentionally hurt because they touched a sleeping soldier and he didn't know where he was. And he thought he was in combat and you were dangerous. And he reacted. Again, we were taught to react. Only happened to me once, and we're at Fort Knox. We're going from California to Germany. So I came home from Vietnam, so I'm living in a little hamlet. Go right to Germany, where I live in another little hamlet. Then come back to the United States to go back to Fort Knox. So we came into California, and I started seeing lights from San Bernardino. Because you're flying in at night, and so you're seeing lights from. I hadn't seen that many lights in 4 years, because we've been in Germany, we've been in Vietnam. You know, I still live in little hamlets. But anyway, we're at Fort Knox on our way to Germany, visiting one of my company commanders that I'd had when I was at Fort Knox. And we're coming out of his house, and I've got your mother in my arms. And because your mom had Allison, we're coming out of the house. And I heard the tank cannons go off. And I had her about there, getting rid of her. I was going to toss your mother aside so I could go to ground. And it was just instinctive. Of course, your grandmother is having heart palpitations that her baby is going to be tossed in the bushes while her husband goes to the ground. And then I realized that I was home. But that's kind of a reaction that and again, I don't have post-trauma, PSD.
Yeah.
I don't have that, or PTSD.
PTSD,
Yeah, very post-traumatic syndrome disorder. Yeah, whatever the right words are. Yeah, I've been lucky I don't have that. I was in enough combat to know combat's not nice and not fun, but not in enough combat to get that. My brother did. It took my brother 40 years to come home from Vietnam because of what he was in. And I've got a guy in my ward who's got severe PTSD. And I check on him all the time just because of it. And several others that I know. I can remember my dad right after, I must have been 10 or 11 years old, I don't know. Old enough to have firecrackers on my own, but not old enough to know what to do with them, kind of a thing. And we would throw them out in the street under the guy's cars going by, you know. And, oh, my dad severely chastised us because, again, what was undiagnosed then, this is 1950, 52, 53, and soldiers with PTSD. And, you know, that firecracker would go off underneath their car, and who knows what they would do, you know. And so I can remember being severely chastised for throwing firecrackers out in the street for that reason. You know, and but it wasn't even something that, well, you've probably seen the movie Patton where he slaps the soldier who's he claims is a coward. He's not. He's just, he cannot function because of his fear. And so, yeah, it's a real thing. But I was lucky. If I have it, I don't know I got it, so I'm good.
Goodness gracious.
You know.
That's crazy. So you came home, then you went to Germany.
Yeah.
And then were you still working? So you were a tank commander there.
Yes.
What kind of stuff does a tank commander do?
Okay. I went to Germany. Again, drove across the country with a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. I don't know, you know. Those are the days when disposable diapers were in their infancy. Okay, they didn't fit very well. They didn't do much of anything. Because we use cloth diapers, of course. I'm old enough for that. But well, somehow we got across the country, and with our 2 little people, and turned the car in Bayonne, New Jersey, so it could be shipped. And we were in Germany probably 3 or 4 weeks without wheels. You know, we just had to depend on somebody to take us wherever we had to go. You know, I had to ride to work. That was easy. Became the battalion motor officer. So I was in charge of maintenance for all the vehicles in the battalion. We arrived there and the battalion didn't know I was coming. Okay, so we're in the BOQ at Ramps, I'll think of the air base in a minute, but it's one in Frankfurt. And called up to my new duty station, said, "Hi, I'm here." And they said, "Who? What? You're here already? Oh my goodness. Well, go to BOQ. We'll send somebody down for you tomorrow. We hope," kind of a thing. So after the guy came the next day and took us up there, put us in temporary quarters. And as I told her, we were in the maids' quarters on the top of the building, you know, over in the enlisted section of housing. And again, no car, 2 babies, you know, all of those things. And I go right to work. I mean, it's like, "Hi, we're here, and sweetheart, this is your new house. Enjoy it.
Bye.
See ya. I'm going to work." And so anyway, I'm the battalion motor officer. And we're getting ready to go to gunnery in Grafenwehr. You went down once a year. You would go down for gunnery training. Okay, because at your home caserne, your place where you actually worked, you couldn't fire your tank weapons. Okay, I mean, tank weapons go a long way, and you got to have a lot of space. So once a year, we'd go to the tank training facility in Grafenwehr, Germany. And we go by train and railroad the cars and the tanks on the cars and do all that and go to Germany or go down to Grafenwehr. So we were getting ready to go, and I was working for a battalion commander who had been an enlisted man before he went to OCS and became an officer, and so he was very gruff, very didn't really like officers very well, even though he was one, lieutenant colonel. He just didn't like us, and he really liked his NCOs better. And but he was a guy I'd follow into combat anywhere because he wasn't going to kill me. And so we were training, and a tank weapon, even though the bullets are this big, still has to be bore-sighted, just like you do with a rifle or a pistol. You still have to bore-sight it. Well, you're doing it on a much larger scale. I mean, I have a panel out there, and you back the tank up on this big incline, and you have a little thing you stick in the bore, and so that you can make sure that when the bullet goes down range, it hits what it's supposed to hit. And so he wanted it done. The battalion commander wanted it done one way, and I was one of my non-commissioned officers, because you asked yesterday about relationship with your non-commissioned officers. Okay, and my senior non-commissioned officer was an instructor out of the tank school at Fort Knox, so he knew what he was doing. And we got the manual out, and the manual said do it the way we were doing it. So we had these tanks backed up on this huge ramp. Well, it's much slower because you have to back the tank up, and you have to get it centered and all of this stuff. And so tank commander came down and just chewed us out up one side and down the other because we were doing it that way. He wanted it done a much faster way, which wasn't as accurate. And so, we of course did what he wanted, or at least for that particular vehicle. So I grabbed the manual and went up to his office and said, "Hey, this is the manual, and this is what it says do. And you came down and chewed us out for doing what it says do. I don't like that." And he said, "Oh, okay." Well, at that point, my NCOs thought I was wonderful, because the colonel knew that as a captain, I didn't have a clue. And so he wasn't really yelling at me. He was yelling at this E7, and not at me, because I didn't know what I was doing. But I took the book up there and showed him that we did know what we were doing, and that he was out of line. And of course, my NCO thought I walked on water from that point. So we did that. I was the maintenance officer for about, not even long enough to get to Grafenwehr. So probably only about 6 weeks, maybe a little less. And company commander of A company which was the tank company, made one of his NCOs angry. And so that NCO went up and talked to the colonel. So the colonel fired him. And he called the two of us up to his office, and he said, "You're the new commander for A company, and you're the new battalion motor officer." Okay.
Oh my God.
So I had 2 minutes to process that. And I walked back, and he cleaned out his office. I cleaned out my office, and I became the tank company commander, and he became the battalion motor officer, which was a good job for him. He did a wonderful job at Grafenwehr for us. But now I'm stuck with being a commander of a tank company. I have 17 tanks and about 90 soldiers, millions of dollars of equipment, all of which I'm signed for. I own it all. I'm smart enough to give it away to everybody else, but I own it. Funny story comes out of that. My executive officer took over for me when I went up to become the battalion or the brigade personnel officer, and we had some toolboxes, and the tools were missing. But he'd signed for full toolboxes, even though he knew they were missing. And he came to me and said, "Sir," he says, "I can't sign for these toolboxes." Says company commander. I mean, I can't take these over. They're empty. And I said, "Whose signature's on there? Those toolboxes?" He says, "Mine." I says, "Guess what? They're yours, and you get to sign for them anyway." And so, but the Army does strange things. If a soldier lost a tool, we would deduct it from his pay, but the money never came back to me as a company commander to go buy a new tool.
Oh.
The money just went back into the Army's general fund. This is wonderful, but it never came back to me, so I couldn't buy a new tool.
Well, that's not fair.
No, but that's just one of those idiosyncrasies that we deal with. But, so I became company commander, And so my day was spent training, teaching supervising the NCOs. I also had to learn how to fight my own tank. Okay, because I'm a tank commander of a tank. There's 17 of them, 5 in each platoon in the 2 headquarters tanks, one of which is mine. And again, I would consider myself a war fighter. I know how to do war if I had to do it. I don't think they would ever call me back. You read in your history books of the revolutionary generals that were in their 70s that got hauled out of, their last combat was the French and Indian Wars, and now they were going to fight the English army, and they were incompetent and couldn't do it. Well, that's where I'd be. I understand that. At 79 years old. But then I have to learn to fight my own tank. So I have to know all the firing commands, and I have to know how to move the turret, and I have to know how to command my driver. So I have to train to do that as well, along with, I have a sergeant in my tank who takes it over when I'm not there, but I still have to be able to do all that. So I had to do that, and I have to make sure the maintenance is done, and that all 17 of my Panzer wagons will go when they're supposed to go. And tanks are a funny animal. They have a brake and an accelerator, just like a vehicle, a car would. But when you push the brake on, it will lock. Okay, so if you put it on with too much pressure, you can't get enough pressure on it to unlock it. And you can't just pull it to unlock it. You have to get enough pressure in on that pressure pad. So we were always dealing with that kind of an issue where somebody would put it on, and we'd have to undo it. Or in the cold, we'd have to put ether in the air scoops so that we could, the flame would come shooting out when we fired them up, because they're diesel engines. Yeah. And again, short-sightedness on the Army's part. It made sense in Germany because our tanks are outside sitting in the weather, so they're cold. Yeah. And diesel doesn't work well in cold. Would be to start them every couple of hours and then just start them, come back up the row and turn them off. That would keep them heated. Yeah. Well, that burned fuel. And so we were told we couldn't do that. So then we'd have to sit there and then they would try and start them when they're cold. And you'd have to have ether, you'd have to have all kinds of things to start them. But we were right there so that if the Soviet Army came across the border, my job was to jump on my tank and go to the border. And I had an assigned spot on the border, and we trained to go up to the border. So we did those kinds of things. We did all the administrative duties of running an organization. I had to provide discipline to the soldiers who didn't. Who oopsed. And so I had to hold court as the company commander and issue disciplinary action. I got to promote them. I got to, and we were smart enough in my battalion to promote them. If a man went from a E4, which was a specialist 4, to a sergeant, so now he's a non-commissioned officer, okay, then it's very hard to come out of that little group that you've been a part of and now suddenly go sit with different people and command these guys, because that's his job, is now to lead them. So when we promoted a soldier to sergeant, we would move him to a new company. Okay, so if I promoted my specialist 4th class to Sergeant E5, I moved him to B company or C company, and that way he was in the mess hall. He'd still see those guys, but he wasn't with those guys. And so it's really hard to let your E5s, to build them that way. Yeah. And we had a shortage of NCOs in Germany, and so I had to run the personnel side of it, because I have to ask for personnel, and I have to requisition them, and have to train them when they got there. And I mean, again, I say I'm at the top of the pyramid. Okay, I've got an executive officer, I've got platoon leaders, I have platoon sergeants, I have a first sergeant. So I don't do that necessarily personally, but I had to make sure it got done.
Yeah.
You know, and had to worry about all the other things that you have to do to be able to go to combat. You know, because we were alerted often, you know, just get the phone call in the middle of the night and say, be here in 10 minutes. And so we'd be there in 10 minutes and we'd start the tanks up and away we'd go. But so we trained. It was because we didn't, I mean, tanks are expensive equipment to operate, and they're terrible gas guzzlers. You know, a mile to the gallon is probably pretty good odds, okay? And so, yeah, it's not what you want for your personal vehicle to do. And they're big and they're heavy, and so most commanders would not ride in their tank. They'd ride in their Jeep. I had a Jeep that belonged to me. I had a driver. He was assigned to me, and so I could go wherever I needed to go. Again, another thing you have to get used to is having a driver.
Yeah.
I mean, gee, I can drive. I'm a big boy. But having a driver, because I've got a map board and I've got all these things that I have to keep track of. I've got 2 radios and 2 microphones, and you know, so I'm a busy person. So I needed a driver, and that made sense. And then as I moved up the command structure, again, having a driver was a great thing because I could work while he was driving. You know, I wasn't driving, but again, something to get used to. I have a driver. Gee, I must be important. No, you're not important, but you just need a driver. You know, and so they would forget that they were a tank commander. And so they don't number things like we numbered, okay? Because we numbered things so that everybody knew who the person was. So a commander was a 6, okay, in the numbering scheme, even though my tank was not 6.
Yeah.
Okay, so my Jeep was 6, my tank was 6 Alpha.
Okay.
Okay, because that's my alternate vehicle. Well, the reality is that's my real vehicle. And this Jeep, which is a whole lot more comfortable and goes a lot faster, was my alternate vehicle. And we had to renumber while I was in Germany to 6 on the tank and 6 Alpha on the Jeep, because we had company commanders who didn't understand they weren't going to war in a Jeep. They were going to war in that tank. And they better know how to use it, and better know what to do with it, and how to sleep in it. And you know, I told you we went to jungle school. Okay, so on a tank, I have lots of places to store things. Big flat boxes on each of the fenders. Okay, and so we carried cases of C rations. We didn't carry C rations; we carried cases. And so I never carried one. The Army has personal gear to hang your stuff on, you know. And we armor guys got to Panama, and they gave us all this load-bearing equipment, and we said, what do we do with this? He said, well, you got to carry it. We got to carry it? We got to carry our food? We got to carry all this stuff? Are you kidding me? That's what I have a Panzer wagon for. We had to find an infantry officer to tell us how to do it, because we didn't have any idea, because I had a tank to put that stuff on. And so, but yeah, and we had to, you know, it was just, so there was lots of administrative kinds of duties to do, and supervisory duties. You know, the soldiers lived in the barracks, ate in the mess halls. We had to, when I was at Fort Knox on my first job, I was a XO of a tank training company, and we had our own mess hall. So I had to go to the mess hall as the XO and inspect the cooks and inspect the food and inspect the cleaning and do all of that stuff. That was a daily task. I had to go to the mess hall. And one time, we had soldiers that were assigned to make sure the tables were cleaned off and all that kind of stuff. And so it just rotated, you know, they were just a tank student. And the young man came up to me and said, "Sir, can I get your breakfast for you?" Sure, I'm a lieutenant. Again, I'm a second lieutenant in the Air Force. I transferred to the Army, and I got promoted immediately to first lieutenant. I've only been a year. Normal progress was maybe 2 years. The Air Force, it was at least 2 years. The Army, it was 1 year, and then 1 year to captain after that. So we moved our ranks faster. Of course, we were killing our lieutenants faster than the Air Force was, so that was probably some reason. And so I'm now a first lieutenant. Well, so I obviously have been a lieutenant for a year. I must know what I'm doing.
Right.
I have a clue, but that's okay. They didn't know that. And so I was treated differently by my NCOs than the young man who just come out of as a second lieutenant, who they knew didn't know anything.
Yeah.
Me, I was an unknown. They weren't sure whether I knew anything or not because I was a first lieutenant. But so I said, sure. Well, he came back to me, and this tray is bowing. There is so much food on this tray because he thought, well, he's my lieutenant. I got to make sure everything's there. I mean, I had everything. And I thought, never will I do that again. So from that point on, I would go through the line with everybody else and get my own food. But there was a reason for that, because I could then see what they were getting and how they were getting it. Because you see the caricatures and the stories of going through the line, the guy goes, slops, you know, the Beetle Bailey thing where he slops it on the plate, and, you know, it looks terrible and it's not edible. And yeah, we had our own mess halls. We had good food. But
that's good.
when I was in Germany, we had battalion mess halls. So we were, you know, and again, as a company commander, I didn't have to do that. My lieutenants did. But those are things that you just have to do, because everything that soldier needs or does, you've got to be involved with. And so, yeah, so our days were busy, but they weren't, always training. We weren't always in the field. You know, we were in the field often, but not always in the field. And so being in the field was the best place to be, again, professionally.
Yes. Because
that's what we were being trained to do, and how do we do it, and if you don't train with it, you can't do it. And it's just, last thing I want to do is go to war with a piece of equipment I don't know anything about. And that's where I'd be now. I mean, I've been in M1s, and I understand what they look like, what they ride like, and I've been in them, but fighting one would be different, because that wasn't the tank that I fought in. You know, so it was the rifle I fought with. Yeah. So those are, you know, I learned how to shoot well. I'm competent, you know, that I could protect myself if I had to.
Pretty sure you're a great marksman.
Yeah, I can do that. I can get what I aim at. So, but it. You know, you see in the detective movies on TV and stuff like that, well, so shoot him in the hand. No, you don't shoot him in the hand, you shoot him in the middle. You know, where you got a big area. Yeah, big again. Different. I'm not trying to wound the fellow. I'm trying to stop him from wounding me. And so it's a different mindset. Yes. You know, to be in that. So I told you the other night, well, I guess it was yesterday, we had a young missionary come home and report to the High Council, and he had been taken hostage in Mexico, and how traumatized they had been, because they're now on the receiving end of the weapon as opposed to on the holding the weapon kind of a thing. And the state president explained to him, and then I said, yeah, it's a totally different experience when you're looking up the barrel. I could do that all day and just thoroughly enjoy myself. Driving a tank is fun. I didn't, again, not my role. I'm not the driver. I'm the tank commander. And I'm telling him what to do. But it's fun driving 62 tons of steel
Yeah.
as fast as it'll go, and it just on ice and all the other things. It's just fun. But you can see why an 18-year-old or 19-year-old sitting in that machine is just having a ball.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did as a 26, 7, 8, 9-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
It was great fun. Took my dad on the driving range, let him drive. Fighter pilot. He's driving a tank on a tank range. But
That's so cool.
that was just fun.
Mm-hmm.
So being a company commander was a fun job.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, the responsibilities are just different. But the other thing that you learn in the service, and maybe you don't learn in civilian life quite so much, is that when I arrived at the new duty station and was given my assignment, everybody expected that I knew exactly what to do with that assignment and that I was now an expert.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there 5 hours, and I'm supposed to be the expert about whatever job I got.
Mm-hmm.
And so you learn very quickly how to adapt that way. And so generally, you don't do that.
Yeah.
There's a trainer, and you have a period of time. And now we're in a period of time because we could be in combat. And so I had to know right now what I was doing. And so your learning curve is very fast,
Yeah.
in that sense, which has stood me well for all these years. In any position, church position, civilian position, Army position, you just learn very quickly.
Did you ever have any people that couldn't catch on fast enough?
Yes.
What happened?
You weed them out as fast as you can. And that sounds harsh, but it isn't really harsh because if they can't do it, somebody's going to be hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we had a young soldier in Vietnam. Because soldiers die and you have to replace them, okay, you need bodies.
Yeah.
Okay, and I can remember taking the Army basic test to see if I qualified to go to OCS and those kinds of things. And I came home and sounds prideful, but it wasn't meant that way, but it sounds that way. And I thought, how could anybody fail this thing?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 1 + 1 is 2. We were at that level kind of a question. And people failed it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with some guys one summer who couldn't read.
Yeah.
They were dads, had babies, and, working for a moving and storage company, and they couldn't read. We would go to the restaurant, and they gave me the menu and said, please tell us what's on it. I was just blown away. I'm a junior in college at that point. But so anyway, Defense Secretary McNamara decided to bring a whole bunch of soldiers in who could not pass that test. Okay, their IQs just weren't high enough. It wasn't that they didn't want to. It wasn't that they didn't try hard. They just couldn't do it. And we got one of those assigned to us in my little fire base. And so we took him and made him our night radio operator. And he knew that he had this and this to do. And if anything else came across that radio, he would wake us. And in fact, you slept that way. I could sleep through the radio because we would report routinely so that our higher headquarters knew we were okay and we weren't under attack or anything like that. If the radio said something other than that routine report, I would waken.
Really?
Because you just slept that way. Well, we had one of those young men. He was a fine young man. And we gave him a job that he could do, and he didn't do anything else. I mean, so I was, the tank course, because of the complicated machinery we operate, was a little step above many of the other positions that an Army a soldier could go into.
Yeah.
And so my soldiers were pretty bright. But if there were some times when, or they got hung up in drugs, or they got hung up in some other things. I mean, drugs in Germany were, easy and plentiful, and I had some soldiers who get caught up in drugs, and now they're sitting in a Panzer wagon with live bullets. I couldn't keep them. I had to get rid of them, and they were dangerous. You know, we had a young man get aggravated at his German girlfriend. He'd gone to the local pub, for lack of a better word, and she made him mad, so he went back to this concern, got in his tank, and drove the tank back downtown and poked that big barrel right through the bar, the door of the bar, and said, "Now let's talk."
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's fully loaded. Fortunately, he's drunk and, you know, doesn't do anything stupid, but we live with machines that were ready to go to war and were loaded, and, you know, people get freaked out when they have a loaded pistol at home. You know, I've got a 105 millimeter cannon with big bullets, and it's really easy to do. You put it in this thing and you push the button. You know, so yeah, we didn't keep people around that we couldn't. We would get rid of them as we had. And that's just part of those chores as a company commander that you have to deal with. But you know, we trained and did those kinds of things, but it takes a toll on a family. Judy and I didn't spend the first. I think we spent our first anniversary together, wedding anniversary. Our second one, I was probably someplace else. Third one, don't remember. So we're finally in Germany, come back from Vietnam. And we were married in '66, so this is '71, so 5 years. Okay. So we're going to have an anniversary. By golly, we haven't had one. We get the babysitter lined up, and we're going to go out to dinner. We're going to, you know, all those things that you do for an anniversary. And the battalion commander calls me up and says, we had a lot of racial unrest. Again, this is early 70s, okay, which is not unusual, but there was a lot of racial unrest, black, white. In the infantry battalions, because they were much bigger than we were, they had 900 in their battalion, where I had 350 in my battalion. Okay, they had 200 in a company, I had 90. So, different situation. We had a big parade field. Well, they would go out on the parade field and rumble. Okay, so post commander had had enough of that. Brigade commander had had enough of that. So his solution was to put tanks at each corner of the parade field with our big searchlights to preclude people going out on the parade field and rumbling. And so I get called to the battalion commander's office. This is the night I'm going on my anniversary now. Okay, got to set the scene. And he says, Captain Braun, 8 companies got the duty tonight. I want 4 tanks on the parade field, and everybody will be in the concern, on post. Well, at this point, I'm not a member of the church yet. Okay. If the Army wanted me to have a family, they issued one. They didn't issue one, so they must not have cared if I had one. So I call my companion without a whole lot, much more thought than no shucks, and say, sweetheart, guess what? I'm on the concern tonight. Ain't coming home. And so where, had I been a member of the church and had realized where family sits and where everything else sits, I would have said, no, it's my anniversary tonight. You know, put B company on the, I'll take tomorrow night. But I didn't do that because I wasn't there yet. You know, that was part of that preparation that he was taking me through to get me to that point. But, you know, wouldn't do that now. But then I did. But that's just, the environment we were in was like that. And so, tough, again, on a family. You don't even realize it again. We moved from Germany to Fort Knox, okay. Judy arrives with the kids, and because she stayed in California while I went straight to Fort Knox, and then she came, and household goods all come, and so they unload your whole house. Okay, you're all in boxes. You've been there. You've moved. Okay. I say, see you, sweetheart. I'm going to work. She gets to take care of the kids, get them in school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, unload the house, put it all together, all by herself, basically.
Yeah.
And I don't even think about it. It doesn't even occur to me, well, shouldn't you be there helping? No, this is what military wives do.
Yeah.
And so, and your grandmother is very, very strong, and she was very able to do that. And she reminds me of that occasionally, that's how things were. They just left her. You got car keys. If you need something, go to the PX, get it. I'm going to work. So it's just
find all the schools, find all the doctors, find
all those things, So it's a little different environment than the civilian world would be, where you'd have time to resettle and help unpack and do all those kinds of things. And now I would do all that.
Of course.
But again, completely changed from 1966 to 2022. I've grown a little bit in that period of time.
It's crazy. It's so crazy.
Just lots of those kinds of experiences as we've been together for 56 years, 56 plus now. So
It's amazing.
it's amazing. The Lord has treated us well. He taught me very well. And still got a long way to go, but he's taught me very well. Yeah, he has. So what else can I tell you?
Well, just anything else that you wanted to share? Anything that you were thinking about?
Well, yeah, there's lots of that. I was very fortunate to have several concurrent careers. Okay, I stayed in the service, which, again, as I told, and I'm sure you've heard me say it, that the scenery doesn't change if you're not the lead dog. Okay? Because if you're the second dog, you're always looking at the rear of the first dog. The first dog's looking everywhere. And see, I want to be the lead dog. Always have been. John is like that. Your Uncle John is like that. He wants to be the lead dog. He doesn't want to be the follow-on dog. And so the Army career allowed me to do that, so that in my civilian career, I didn't have that same need. Okay? So I progressed well. I was a leader in my civilian career as an insurance regulator, but it was because I didn't need to be the commissioner. I was content to be the assistant commissioner, because over here, I was the leader.
Yeah.
And so I had the two careers side by side. When I became chairman of the board of Arches, an insurance company, okay, again, a lead dog.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be just on the board of directors. I wanted to be the chairman of the board of directors. But if I was going to be there, I wanted to be the lead dog. And so it's just the way I have been. It's the way I'm wired. And it's probably difficult sometimes to live with the lead dog, because they have different worries and different concerns, and they approach things differently. I can remember we were looking for a board member, so I took this prospective board member to lunch with the CEO of Arches and the CFO, the financial officer, and the chief operating officer. And the three of us all went to lunch with this new guy. And so at the end of the lunch, I offered the new guy the position on the board. And they came out and said, well, this is really unusual that you would do that. I said, well, he was the right guy and the right fit. Why not? But that's how I operated, and that's the way I've done it all my life. And so it wasn't strange to me, but it was strange to them, because that's not how they had operated. And so, yeah, so I had the career with Arches as the chairman of the board. Again, job I had no clue what chairman of the board does, but I guess I'll go find out. And we did, and we were successful. You know, so I guess from that standpoint, yeah, you know, all of my children are leaders, each in their own way, each differently from the others. Again, John wants to be the top dog. Allison wants to be the top dog.
Yes.
Your mom's content not to be there, and yet she's a tremendous leader. Becky's a leader. Josh leads in his family and on the soccer field and as a coach and all those things. So, yeah, I guess that's rubbed off on him in that sense. I've been. You don't look for positions in the church. Okay, never had a desire to be a leader there. I'm a leader. I'm stake executive secretary, so I guess I'm in that leadership chain. Yeah. But you know, a leader in my family, yeah. You know, I had my second counselor's had his first grandbaby. Okay, so he's dealing with all of that, and I made the comment to him. I said, the thing with your children is your children have grown up with you. Okay, so they've seen you good, bad, whatever. Your grandbaby is never going to know you as a young person. Your grandbaby is always going to think you're old. And they're going to question you when you say that you did something, like you climbed up in the tree, or you, you know, you stole the watermelon, or you did whatever it is you did. They're going to say, oh, no, you're too old. You couldn't do any of that. I said, and so you're always on your A game with your grandbabies. You know, you just crush them if you get angry with them. You know, oh, no, the world's crashed. Yeah. Mom and Dad can get angry with me, I don't care. But if Grandpa gets angry with me, oh, this is terrible. Or a great-grandbaby. And you don't see him very often. So I said, just get used to it, Clint. It'll be different. And it is. You know, and grandbabies are wonderful. Great-grandbabies are even better. You know?
They just get better and better.
Yeah, they do. They just get better and better. I don't think I'll live to great-greats, but, you know. Yeah, but they, because Caleb's 4. Yeah. You know, and you know, I've got a lot of longevity in my line, but it doesn't generally go past late 90s. So I don't think I'll get there for that. You know, but yeah, it's just fun, and the church has made such a difference in our lives. You know, 'cause we joined the church in Germany, and so since '72, but it's made a big difference. If I had anything to say to my posterity, I'd say, you know, stay close to the church. You know of yourself that Jesus is the Christ and that the Lord lives, and that, you know, you can and will return, and, you know, be the best you can be to get there. It's worth it. You know, now they won't believe me. That's all right, but that's okay. I can say it. You know, and it's just guided us. But it's how you treat people. You ask about leadership. It's how you treat people. I can remember I asked my dad once. He was a squadron commander, and I asked him. I said, Dad, why do you go in late to work? Because, you know, work started at 8 o'clock, and he'd go in at 8:30, 8:45. Why do you go late? I don't understand this. I mean, aren't you supposed to lead? You're supposed to be, you know. He says, I go late so I can't catch them if they're late. Because if I catch them coming in late, then I have to do something. And they don't want to be late on purpose, but they're late nonetheless. He said, so I go late so that I don't have to catch them late. And I thought, I like that. And so I incorporated that. That made sense to me. Because you treat them like you wanted to be treated. And if you treat the folks that work for you that way, then they're happy campers. And you give them latitude to do what they want to do, and teach them and train them, and let them go do it, even though it's different than yours. I mean, as I said, I had one battalion commander who did everything different than I did. And it jarred me nuts. because he'd do it differently than I did. But he was successful. And that's all the way I could rate him, was he was successful. His troops knew what to do and got it done, just like the other guys did.
Yeah.
They just didn't think like I did. And so, yeah, but I've been very successful. I'm quite happy with who I am and where I are, and with all that's have come from that. You know, as a parent, you always wonder why it is you're the parent, and why it is these particular children came to your house. If you're fortunate enough to have children, I mean, there are families who don't, and that's unfortunate. But it's because that's how he wants it, and there's a purpose for that. And then the little ones come, and they get married, and more little ones come, and it just, the pyramid just goes crazy, and the pyramid goes like that. I'm working on a genealogy family, a car family, and goes back into the mid-1400s. And somehow I've gotten a line crossed, and I'm hooked to an uncle instead of a grandparent, and I got I've got to straighten it out. But those are, I would, Anthony made the comment yesterday that he would really have liked to be able to talk to his revolutionary ancestors. Well, I've got guys that fought in the Revolutionary War, the French and Indian War, and both sides of the Civil War, and got slave owners on both sides of the Civil War. I'd love to be able to talk to those people and see how they approach their combat experience and stuff like that. I'll get that chance someday, but not right now. And there are no journals. So.
Well, that's why we're so grateful that we get to have this opportunity.
Yes, and I'm so grateful for it. Because I can write it in my journal, and maybe you guys will read it someday, but if this age, we like to look at it. Hear it and look at it, because you guys have made the comment that you found something from Darren's dad, and you all got to listen to his voice, because he died before you were old enough to remember that. And of course I don't know I know one grandparent, one grandfather, one grandmother, and they weren't into grandkids. So, grandkids were those little kids over there, go play and don't bother me, kind of a thing. And so, I don't want to be that kind of a grandparent. That's the kind of grandparents I had, and I don't want that. But,
well, you're definitely not.
You got to get on the floor and play with them, even if you can't get off the floor.
That's the hard part.
Well, I laughed, and those that are listening would laugh. I got down on the floor to play with Maverick the other day, and you said, "Grandpa, you got on the floor." And not only that, you got off the floor. And I thought, well, yeah, I still can. It's, a little slower, and it hurts a little more, but I can still do that. But yeah, you got to get, you want to be that person. You want to be in their lives. And yet you have to give them the freedom to live their life and to make their own choices. And you're just beginning that. But, they have to be able to make their own choices, and you have to just love them anyway. And you just do. It's what he does. I'm sure the Lord sits up there and shakes his head and says, "He did that again?" Seriously?
Yep.
No, not again. Yeah, he does that. And, but so do we as parents. And so do I as a leader. You had to let them make their own choices and make their own decisions, make their own mistakes. So how are they going to learn if they don't make a mistake? And just let them go. They do it. But that's a great opportunity for me. I'm so tickled to be able to do it. Never thought I'd get that opportunity. So thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Missy. Thank you for all you guys that are behind the cameras. It's just a neat opportunity for me. Lots of stories, and I'm sure I haven't told you half of them. But when do you get a chance to tell your story? We had everybody at the house the other day, right? It was chaos. It was a happy chaos. It was chaos. Nobody was going to sit down and listen to Grandpa talk. They were all busy doing their own thing. And so you just don't get that chance. And now I've had that chance, and that's wonderful. And so I'll probably look at this tape and go, oh, really? He said that? And he said it that way? Yeah, he did. But it's just delightful, and I appreciate the opportunity. And
anything else you want to say?
again, tell them that I know the Lord lives and that Jesus is the Christ and that it's his path and that he has guided my path even when I didn't know he was guiding it. Probably got lots of bruise marks where his elbows hit me and said, go the other way. But, I want them to know that, if nothing else. So thank you.
Thank you.